Hello, Sgurr A'Chaorachain Surprise Royal, the method that's harder to say than it is to ring. It's named after a Scottish mountain. Composed by David Brown, it was first rung in 1996 on handbells and then on tower bells a few years later. It's not one of the standard Surprise Royal methods, but it has been gaining popularity in the last few years, and it certainly deserves to be part of the standard repertoire. It's a very good method on 10. It's about the same level of difficulty as Bristol. It's also a very good stepping stone towards Zanussi Surprise Maximus, which is one of the standard repertoire of advanced 12-bell methods. There are some similarities with Bristol, and I'm going to make use of them while explaining it. But if you haven't rung Bristol Royal, don't worry. It just means you'll have to take some slightly different approaches to learning parts of Sgurr A'Chaorachain. It's a method with a clear separation into front work and back work, each with a distinctive structure, and taking advantage of the structure is really the key to ringing it. Here's the back work. You can see that there are some points near the beginning of the lead, and then some more points a few blows later. And of course, the same thing happens towards the end of the lead. And these points produce a distinctive feature in the blue line of several place bells, which is this pair of big points. The first one is where it would be in Bristol, and then you reverse hunt back to where you started, do another point, and then start forward hunting again. We'll see more of that in a moment. There it is again at the end of second place bell, hunting to a point, reverse hunting to a point, and then forward hunting again towards the lead end. The front work also has a very regular structure. It has some similarities with Bristol. We've got points in the same position that they would be in Bristol, another set of points just after the half lead, and unlike Bristol, we've got dodging across the half lead in the front 6 places, and that's quite a useful stabilizing feature in Sgurr A'Chaorachain. And the structure of the front work produces in several place bells a distinctive pattern of 2 points, some distance apart, and with a dodge at the half lead symmetrically arranged between them. Besides the front work and the back work, we've got what I sometimes call the twiddly bits. These are the areas which are not part of the front work or part of the back work, but they are the interface between the front work and the back work. And very often in methods of this kind, there's not much of a clue to learning these twiddly bits. You just have to learn them. You just have to develop some mnemonics for them, which will help you to remember what they are. The place bell order is very important when learning any method, and the place bell order of Sgurr A'Chaorachain is a bit tricky. Here it is, 10, 2, 9, 4, and so on. It looks a little bit unusual. It's not like the methods you've probably rung before. There are various ways of thinking about it. One possibility is to think of decreasing odd numbers from 10, 9, 7, 5, 3, interspersed and alternating with increasing even numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8. That might help you to remember what the whole sequence is. If you know the place bell order of Little Bob very well, then you may recognize that Sgurr A'Chaorachain goes alternately through the place bells of Little Bob. Or you can think of it as going alternately in reverse through the place bells of Cambridge. If you think about or write down the place bell order of Cambridge, you'll see that that's the case. Another way of thinking about it is that one lead of Sgurr A'Chaorachain is equivalent to 2 leads of Cambridge, followed by a lead of plain Bob. Or, if you're familiar with the system where plain Bob place bell order is described as +1, then Sgurr A'Chaorachain is either -4 or equivalently +5. One lead of Sgurr A'Chaorachain is equivalent to 5 leads of plain Bob. But however you think about it, it's important to be able to know at the beginning of each place bell which place bell you're aiming to become at the end of the lead, because that will help you to join up all the rules and bits of structure into a coherent whole. Let's have a look at some place bells. These 3 place bells, 5ths, 7ths, and 9ths, are all entirely in the back work. They're ringing the regular pattern of the back work, and each place bell starts by hunting to a point where it would do the same point in Bristol, reverse hunting back to where it started and doing another point, and then there's treble bob hunting until it's time to do the points near the end of the lead. It's important to know when to stop treble bob hunting and when to do the first of the pair of points towards the end of the lead. And there are a couple of ways you could think about that. One is to notice that the hand stroke point towards the end of the lead is when the treble is doing its thirds place at the beginning of its 3/4 down dodge, and you might be able to hear that. Alternatively, you can think ahead to which play spell you're planning to become and work backwards to which point you have to do before hunting to the new play spell. Or if you don't like either of those ideas, you can just learn and remember that 7th play spell does the points in the same position at the beginning of the lead as it does at the end of the lead. 7th play spell is the pivot bell, the symmetrical one. And in the other 2 play spells, you've got points in 5ths and 8ths at one end of the lead and points in 9ths at the other end of the lead. And it's just reversed between 5th play spell and 9th play spell. And by the way, this little structure here that looks like a kind of double Stedman whole turn, this really is a pair of points in the same pattern as all the others. This point 9ths here would really like to be point 12ths if we were ringing on enough bells to fit that in, but it's folded over or bounced off the end of the rope. Next, let's look at 10th play spell. 10th play spell starts off in the backwork pattern, point 7ths, point 10ths, and then starts going down, dodges in 7/8, which is part of the treble bobbing pattern, and then it passes the treble in 6/7. And because the front work is similar to Bristol, when 10th play spell passes the treble on the way down, it goes to the same point blow that it would do if it had passed the treble in the same place in Bristol, which in Bristol would be 9th play spell. But here you see the 6th place just under the treble and then point 3rds. And the other thing you need to remember in 10th play spell is how it joins onto these 3/4 places. And you might find it helpful to see that the part of the Stedman whole turn in 5/6 here forms the same shape as the beginning of the 3/4 places. It's a point, then a place, then you hunt down a bit, do a point and a place, and then you're joining onto the 3/4 places. I find that a helpful way to join up the pieces of work in 10th play spell. Next, let's look at 2nd play spell. And let's compare it with 2nd play spell Bristol. The beginning of 2nd play spell, dodge, Stedman, double dodge, is not exactly the same as the beginning of 2nd play spell in Bristol, but it does take up the same amount of space, and that means that 2nd play spell goes to the same point that it would have done in Bristol, which is point 6. And then it hunts down and deviates from Bristol because Sgurr A'Chaorachain, of course, has the dodge at the half lead. Let's compare the end of 2nd play spell with the end of 4th play spell in Bristol, because after doing point lead in either method, we hunt up and meet the treble in exactly the same way. In this case, 5ths, dodge 5/6. Of course, what you do above the treble is different in Sgurr A'Chaorachain than it would be in Bristol, but remembering this can get you from the point lead to meeting the treble in 5/6 in the correct way. 4th play spell is the last one, if you remember that we can also reverse all the play spells we've discussed so far. 4th play spell is perhaps a little bit awkward. It doesn't have quite as many signposts based on Bristol. It's got this section of front work which looks a little bit strange, but if you've managed to learn how 2nd play spell starts, 4th play spell just fits in exactly with it, and you can see that all this wiggly bit of work that 4th play spell is doing, you've just got 2 there doing exactly the opposite and fitting around it. Then it's point 4ths, dodge and 1/2 at the half lead, Stedman on the front because you're going hunting to a point as you would in Bristol. And then the way I remember the rest of 4th play spell is that you've got a little shape repeated 3 times successively higher and higher up. And that will get you past the treble and joining onto this little bit of 5/6 work. And notice that the 5/6 work here, again, it is part of the back work pattern with a pair of points. It's just that we've come into it from below by passing the treble in 4/5. So those are the place bells. And before we finish, I just want to say one more thing about the front work. It's very easy to look at the grid of Sgurr A'Chaorachain and say, oh yes, the front work is like Bristol with the points, but there's a dodge at the half lead. But there is an important way in which it's not exactly the same as Bristol. And that is that all the bells are coursing in the opposite order at the half lead than they would be in Bristol. So in these two diagrams, Sgurr A'Chaorachain on the left, Bristol on the right, we've got a pair of place bells in each case, and green is coursing ahead of blue. So the Sgurr A'Chaorachain diagram, the 8th is green, coursing ahead of the tenor, which is in blue. In the Bristol diagram here, the 9th is green, coursing ahead of the 7th, which is blue. And what happens in Bristol is that the bells hunt to a point, and then they both change direction, so the coursing order is reversed. They pass the treble in reverse coursing order. They go to a point near the front, and that reverses them again to put them back into the natural coursing order. So across the half lead in Bristol, the bells are all hunting in their natural coursing order. However, in Sgurr A'Chaorachain, because of the extra point in the back work, the coursing order reverses again. The bells pass the treble in coursing order, and then they go down to a point which reverses them. So at the half lead in Sgurr A'Chaorachain, the bells are all in the reverse of the coursing order. And this is important to know because the structure of points around the half lead is quite helpful if you're trying to keep other ringers right, trying to put people right around you. And if you're accustomed to doing that in Bristol, if you try to do it in Sgurr A'Chaorachain, you do need to know that everyone's coursing in the reverse order at the half lead. So the key points we've looked at here are, first of all, identify patterns in the grid, the back work and the front work. Use the place bell order to link them up and work out what each place bell is, and develop mnemonics for these twiddly bits, which are the interfaces between the back work and the front work. And that's all.